your home with BuildAid on Mix 93.8. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.
BuildAid on Mix 93.8 FM. Good evening. My name's Graham Alexander. As usual, Simon Cretney doing the desk and Kay looking after all of us.
Yeah, good evening. And we're doing again something that we did a little while ago, weird lyrics. Now, last time we did this, I gave you the line, sitting in the kitchen eating peanut butter, and some of you got it, and that was by Blondie. It was called Eat to the Beat, that song. So I got new weird lyrics, and it's probably quite easy because Simon, who's a massive Iron Maiden fan, actually sang the song when I read out the lyrics earlier, and it's really not an Iron Maiden kind of song. So I'm looking for the artist and the song that contains these lyrics. What about elephants? Have we lost their trust? So if you know which song I'm talking about, SMS us on 41348 and you could win some delicious water ice cream.
Ice cream made by a cement company or promoted by a cement company. The show is brought to you by AfriSam. I'm going to be chatting to Susanne Terblanche from Reddeco. We're talking interior design. Susanne, thanks so much for coming to chat to us.
It's nice being here. Thanks for the opportunity.
It's always good having creative people to chat to because the show sometimes gets a bit technical when we're talking about concrete and bricks and roof tiles and so on. Susanne, how did you get into interior design?
Well, I grew up in a tiny place called Brits. I know most people won't be really open about saying that, but oh well, it's out there. And it was very flooded with that hot pierce poor dam type of African thing. So I grew up with that in my face, and my parents absolutely loved that, especially my mom. The masks and the patterns and the textures and all that. And I had this hunger or this search for there must be something more out there. It can't just be flooded with African. So subconsciously, I think I had this search, this ending need or hunger to find something more. And mom was a seamstress, dad is a specialist mechanic. So I was creatively influenced by both sides, as you would believe it or not. And in Standard 8, I had this realization that with a whole life of influence with this from my mom and my dad, and then art from doing art class and everything, I wanted to step out into the bigger places like Pretoria and Joburg and whatever, and go find something that would give me feed this hunger that I had. And yeah,
sometimes one doesn't sort of view a small town like Brits as being that far away, but I suppose when you grow up and you're a youngster in that space, maybe you are a bit isolated.
I think so. You're definitely isolated from, you don't know the industries, like you're not as exposed to architecture and interior design and like engineering and the specific subcategories that you can go into. So I think you are a bit of at a disadvantage in that, but then you come to the closest town, which is 50 kilometers away, and you get the exposure to all of that.
Yep. How did you get involved with Reddeco?
Well, I was very fortunate. After studying, I got into my second interview was with Gijsbert from Reddeco, and he obviously liked my portfolio and gave me a shot. And like I previously mentioned, had a terrible probation period. I cried in the first 2 weeks, and I didn't think I would make it. And he gave me the opportunity, and 9.5 years later, I'm now his business partner, and we've got an amazing team. Hi, team. And we're doing great stuff. So very fortunate.
When it comes to interior design, there's sometimes a bit of confusion. You know, there's an architect involved, and some people say there's a decorator involved, and a lot of people. Just explain what does an interior designer do?
Okay, to my best of my knowledge, an interior designer creates an experience within a space, as do I presume an interior decorator. But we design everything within the space. So we get either a house or a white box in a shopping center or a white box in a commercial space and a brief from a client, and then we develop an experience. So we design the tables, the chairs, the lights, the ceilings, the beds, the cupboards, the kitchens. We design. There's a lot of technical aspects to interior design as well. And the decorating part flows hand in hand with that, as well as do architecture.
I know you guys mainly do commercial work, but if you're designing the lighting per se, I mean, it could be very similar to the way you would go about it in a residence. But when we come back after the break, I want to chat about how you take a brief from a client and take things forward from, as you've said, a white box or a home on a piece of paper. Susan, everything's got to start somewhere, and I liked your terminology of a white box, being an office with nothing in it, but a house starts somewhere as well. And I would guess that the interior designer would like to get involved while they're still designing the house, not when there's some walls and plaster and whatever. So I just need to understand the process. Obviously, there's an architect involved. The architect has designed the space. How soon does the architect contact you, or does the homeowner, or is it a combination of the two? And it might not be a homeowner, it might be someone building a restaurant.
As I might have been incorrect there, because it doesn't always start at a white box. Sometimes we get approached by the developer, or either the owner or the client of the restaurant, or whichever may it be, in the development stages still. So then the architects already developed the space, the building, the house, or whatever. And then basically we would get involved. There's a couple of items. We would work with the architectural team, and then there would be the engineers and all of that. But we would first sit down with the client as get a formal brief, and then obviously submit a quote, get it pointed. And then we would work along that brief and do an initial introduction, like a conceptual and a space planning, get that signed off, do some 3Ds around that, get that approved. And after that, we'll do a full-on technical documentation, and then gets priced and goes to site.
You guys have just finished the Nando's on Coolett Drive.
Yes.
Now let's take that as an example. How much freedom or design freedom does the client or the architect give you as the interior designer?
With this specific project, we were very fortunate to work with an excellent architect. He's currently my favorite. And we worked very much hand in hand on that. So he basically worked a lot on the base building. Basically, that would be the main steel structure and all the specifics on roof and the surrounding site and all of that, and the approach thereof, and the how it sits on the site and all of that. And then we come in, and Nando's has asked us specifically to not just be a part of the interior design, but also the architecture and the facade and the design thereof, and the landscaping and so on. So it's very much a full spectrum job, and we worked with the architect from the inside to the outside. It was very involved, and that was a really nice experience.
How often do you see that type of experience? And as I've already said, you don't do commercials, so this question might be a bit tricky. But how often do you see that happen in a residential project where you're that involved?
I think in a way we have done a couple of residential along the last couple of years, and I think it depends on a client's needs and requirements, but it is amazing where on some projects we get full spectrum, where we because Gijs, my business partner, is also an architect, so we would then design inside, outside, full on, and then also worked hand in hand with an engineering team and all of that. But with residential, it is not as common, I presume, as what it is in the commercial industry.
Susan, when it comes to the South African design world, where are we in comparison to the rest of the world?
Very relevant. I think if it was 10 years ago, or maybe between 5 and 10 years ago, we were searching very much for influence and reference and inspiration from all the overseas markets and blogs and design industry. But as our own industry emerged right in our backyard with amazing furniture and industrial designers, and just amazing, talent, we became such an amazing source for inspiration, and we became relevant. Our design standards and our projects are right on par with international standards.
So you're more fearless as designers. So if you want a chair made or a table or something, design it, you're going to get it made. Is it that is that where we're going?
That is exactly it. We have the same capabilities, I think, and sometimes even more, because we don't have all the options, we don't have all the machinery. So you can get a gem of a product from some small town somewhere in KZN, of an artist that you recognize somewhere at a Design in Durban, or a light from a very inspired school kid, that had means or just had this endless passion. And South Africa is also, the South African design market is also open to using those authentic or once-off, or just open to support the South African design market so much more.
Does it make it more cost efficient than, say, importing chairs from Italy, or is that not necessarily the case? Because I think artists should be paid properly in the first place. But if it's local, does it mean you can design more efficiently from a cost point of view?
I think currently with the rand and importing stuff,
For
yes,
sure.
for sure. But I think a little bit yes and no. We have high-end furniture, bespoke furniture and lighting in this country that is quite costly, but it is it's art. It is seen as art, and we should then, support it with paying the adequate, amount and raising the standard. But we have means of making furniture and lighting very cost effectively, instead of flying it in from Italy or Spain or whatever.
So back to using a table as an example. You can now, as a designer, design the table. You're not going to pick it off the internet somewhere or out of a catalogue. So it gives you that freedom, that flair.
I do believe it opens it up for everybody. We met at a Design in Durban, I think last year or the year before. We sat in a talk of this, I think, Kenyan artist, and he was in finance, and he fell in love with photography and fashion. And so that's making it in having that passion and having the capability right on your doorstep opens it up for everybody. It's not just the creatives already in the industry. So it opens up that field of endless opportunity.
Do you find that there are small economies starting to emerge out of what we're talking about? Small factories, furniture manufacturers, and so on, that would have, as you said, 5 years ago, maybe been imported from England or something?
Yes, I think that's very much happening. There's areas like in Johannesburg, like Braamfontein and 44 Stanley, and there's even a nice area in Pretoria, in Hazelwood or in Menlo Park, that is there's little shops popping up everywhere, with these amazing products that you haven't seen yesterday and that you might use tomorrow.
Going to come back and chat to you, in a mo about working with your contractors. Some of them are manufacturers, but mainly your contractors. But we're at a point in the show where Simon shares what we call factoids with us. Those are things you don't need to know anything about.
A useless blob of information. This one specifically for AfriSam. That there was a bridge built in Lima in Peru in 1610. That was made with mortar, but without water, and was used with 10,000 eggs, and it's still standing today.
So that's a Banting Bridge. Then.
That's a Banting Bridge, yeah. And if there's ever a serious water shortage, well, yeah, they'll attack the chicken farms next.
Susan Terblanche, thank you so much for coming to chat to us.
It was a great pleasure. Thanks. It's so much fun.
Thanks also to Kay for looking after all of us, and to Simon for looking after the desk, And we got Mr. Jackson with a camera, and I know him and I are going to go and watch Liverpool later on this evening. And up next is Adam Ford Mustang and Motoring in the Mix. We do this every Wednesday between 6 and 7. Catch you next week. Ciao.
Your home with BuildAid on Mix brings you all sorts of interesting info about building. Graham Alexander chats to different guests every Wednesday evening between 6 and 7. Proudly brought to you by AfriSam. AfriSam, creating concrete possibilities.